By show of hands, how many lefties do we have here today? All right, well, congratulations. You are part of a population who has been associated with the devil. Are you regretting raising your hands now? Hopefully not. It was previously thought that people who are left-handed were unlucky or evil. In fact, the word sinister was derived from the word for left. Ugh. But it's clearly not true. Did you know that lefties only made up about 2 to 3% of the entire population back in the 1900s? But today, that's about 10% of the population. Why might that be? Well, we stopped punishing people for being left-handed. Left-handedness became far more accepted, and frankly, we realized that left-handedness was reframed as a naturally occurring trait. Human difference, not something to be fixed. Like someone might have blue eyes or brown hair, just happens to be left-handed. The world's changed for lefties, except maybe this auditorium where you'll notice that all of the desks are right-handed desks. But we now have left-handed desks, fewer outside, and left-handed scissors, tools that help lefties be lefties and reach their full potential. Now let's talk about the world of neurodiversity. Just like the world was designed for right-handed people, the world was also designed for neurotypical, brains that were designed in a particular way that is considered the average. Neurodivergency makes up about 15 to 20% of the world's population. And of that population, that includes things like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, dysgraphia, etc., more than 10% of the children in America have been diagnosed with ADHD, the most frequently diagnosed of neurodivergencies. So let's talk about how we can work together to create a world where neurodivergency can take the same path as left-handedness and just become part of the norm. Because we live in a world of neurodiversity, and left-handedness is a trait, and like left-handedness, so is neurodivergence, a natural variation in how our brains work. People with ADHD are a growing population. And no, not just because it's become cool or all of their friends are doing it, but it's because we are now far more aware of the symptoms and the traits of ADHD. So what is ADHD? Let's just talk about that for a moment here, shall we? We're going to get a little scientific and go with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, or the DSM-5, because that's a lot to say. It comes in 3 flavors. You have hyperactive impulsive, which includes things like fidgeting, interrupting, talking excessively, can't stay put for long periods of time. This might sound familiar. We also have the inattentive type, which used to be known as ADD. This is the type where we lose things, are forgetful. I spent 20 minutes looking for my glasses this morning. And having trouble to keep attention on tasks. And then, of course, there's the combined type, which combines the two, as you might have suspected. And these symptoms can vary in type and intensity from person to person. It's on a spectrum. ADHD as a diagnosis is typically looked at negatively. There are deficits associated with ADHD. Things like hyperactive, impulsive, inattentive, and distracted are words that are commonly associated. You heard it in the definitions. I'd like for you to remember some of those words that we talked about, because spoiler alert, ADHD is no deficit of attention. Leading researcher and expert on ADHD, Dr. Ned Hallowell, equates the ADHD brain to being like a Ferrari engine, but with bicycle brakes. An incredibly powerful engine, but doesn't have the braking system to support that power. And that can cause some issues. And like I said, ADHD is no lack of attention. In fact, in my brain, it feels like 47 different tabs are open, and one of them is playing music. I'm not entirely sure which one. But we also know that ADHD has some incredible strengths associated with it, so much so that there are many people who attribute wild success and revolutionary change in their industries to having ADHD, to having those brain differences. People like Richard Branson of the Virgin Group, local celebrity Penn Holderness, social media, and also won the Amazing Race and attributes his win to his ADHD brain, as well as Simone Biles, the greatest gymnast of all time. The scoring had to be changed in gymnastics to accommodate her revolutionary, incredible moves. And so we have strengths of ADHD as well, incredible strengths. Curiosity, passionate about the things we do. We love to experiment and have deep expertise in areas of interest because we have this incredible ability at times to hyper-focus, to focus and feel like no time has passed at all on what it is that we're trying to do. In fact, some of the things that have been known as deficits within a diagnosis of ADHD, things like impulsivity, have fairly recently been studied by the academic community and are linked with being better attuned to entrepreneurial action. Combine that impulsivity with novelty seeking, getting bored with your day-to-day, and an increased risk appetite, and it is no surprise that twice as many people with ADHD end up becoming entrepreneurs or starting a business as their neurotypical peers. So we can reframe ADHD. We can reframe from symptoms to strengths to superpowers. Those words we looked at before. Hyperactivity translates to passion and high energy. Impulsivity to intuitive decision-making. And inattention and distractibility, that's our endless curiosity. Part of what helps to find those superpowers and utilize them as superpowers is finding what works for you. For me, my superpower is the power of connection. I love connecting with people. I love connecting processes. I love connecting problems with solutions. And it's what's helped to make me very successful in my career. But in order to do that, I've also needed to put tools, processes in place so that I can manage some of the things that are a little bit more challenging for me. For me, those challenges are in my executive function, or that part of my brain that's supposed to be the chief operating officer, so that I know what to do and when, and I'm really organized about it. It doesn't quite work like a neurotypical brain. For me, my working memory is particularly a challenge. And your working memory is a bit like a Post-it note. You write something down on there and you stick it up for a very temporary thought. Well, my Post-it notes are kind of the cheap kind that don't have that adhesive that works very well, and so when I put something on it, it sort of flutters away and I can't find it. So I have tips and tricks that I use, like writing it down. I carry pads with me, or Post-it notes, real ones, and the kind with good adhesive, so that I can remember when a good thought pops up in those 47 tabs, and I will write it down. Thank you to my kid, shout out, because I totally forgot my notepad before coming on the stage today, and my kid lent me this, so thank you. Timers and alarms. I live by my calendar. My calendar dictates what I do and when, and helps me remember to go to a meeting or make a call. And my friends and my coworkers know, if it's not on my calendar, if I haven't written it down, it's probably not going to happen. But if it's on my calendar, I will be there, and we will figure out some really creative solutioning. Visual reminders. I do laundry. Well, my husband does most of the laundry in the house, but when I do laundry, I have to keep the laundry basket outside of the laundry room so that I pass it every time I walk into the kitchen to remind myself that there is laundry in that washer and/or dryer. So hopefully it doesn't sit there for days. And finally, automate and delegate. We're not good at everything, and so using the people around me who are really good at those things, and even things like AI nowadays, are really helpful in mitigating my own risks so that I can use my superpowers. Find what works for you to truly unlock your superpowers too. And it might be different than what works for me, and that's okay. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. I think I was just talking to a lot of people who might identify with me in the neurodiverse community. I also want to talk to those of you out there who are employers, coworkers, friends, family, allies. Let's think about neurodiversity in the workplace and allyship. We want to create inclusive workplaces for everyone to be able to reach their full potential. Including neurodivergent voices can support innovation and the bottom line. So let's talk a little bit about the value of an inclusive workplace. Organizations supporting inclusive cultures are twice as likely to meet or exceed financial targets. They're 3 times as likely to be high performing. They are 6 times as likely to be agile and innovative. And they are 8 times as likely to achieve better business outcomes. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me, especially being an employer. So how do we unlock some of those superpowers in the workplace? Well, let's start with psychological safety. Dr. Amy Edmondson talks about psychological safety as the feeling that as part of a team, you are able to share risks and ideas without fear of repercussion. This invites conversation, and it invites ideas that may not have come into the room before. It's felt permission for candor. And this can lead to better decision-making, higher team performance, creativity, learning, and more. I'm seeing upsides here. And with the psychological safety, ensuring we have diverse, inclusive teams, because they're more likely to have financial returns above the industry average. We just talked about that. They're more innovative, and they're better at making decisions. I know you're chomping at the bit to hire me so that I can be part of your team to make sure that we are making awesome decisions. And finally, let's talk about the physical workspace as well. Universal design. Just like the world was designed for right-handed people, the world was also designed for the neurotypical majority. This brings about challenges for people who are neurodivergent, like myself. So let's talk about some of the challenges that brings up. I'm going to start with fluorescent lighting. I mean, who really likes that anyway? But fluorescent lights, they hum, they buzz, they're incredibly harsh. And for someone with sensory sensitivities, it can actually be painful. People can lose focus, and it can cause headaches and other problems. So let's think about how we can have things in the workplace that will help everyone. Universal design, adjustable lighting, adjustable seating, things like different ways of communication. This can benefit everyone. Everyone in this room and beyond, have the power to embrace these inclusive practices, to reframe our mindsets for ourselves and others, reduce stigma, and we can do this together. Because at the end of the day, who doesn't want an office full of superhero teams and fewer fluorescent lights? Thank you.